Very good morning, students. Today we'll be dealing with a topic of jurisdiction of court. Now, what do we mean by the term jurisdiction? Jurisdiction means an area within which a court performs, or an area within which a court exercises its authority or a power. This area may be understood in various aspects. Like area may be in relation to territory, area may be in relation to the subject matter of the suit, the area may be in relation to the authority or the power of the court to entertain the matter at a very first instance, to which we call the same to be original jurisdiction, and second, to entertain the matter by way of appeal, to which we call it as an appellate jurisdiction. So, understanding what do we mean by the term jurisdiction is very important. Now, students will be in today's lecture would deal with jurisdiction term in detail. What are its various kinds? Who gives the jurisdiction to the court and who is having an authority to withdraw the same, as well as whether the jurisdiction can be claimed as a good defense by the defendant. That is what we are going to see today. Now, first of all, we would try to learn or understand the concept of jurisdiction. Now, as I said, jurisdiction is nothing but an area within which the court perform its function. It could be called as a power or the authority to ascertain, to entertain, try, and determine a cause. Now, firstly, to ascertain means what? To find out whether the court is really having a jurisdiction to do what? To entertain the parties in the matter which has come before the court. So, it is nothing but a power and authority to entertain, to try, and to determine a cause. Here, three of the term plays a very important role. To entertain the parties who are before the court. Now, any party who is coming before the court need not be having an authority to entertain those parties. So, important is from the point of view of the civil matter is concerned, the court must be given a power by the legislature to entertain these parties. Now, when the court would entertain these parties, firstly, either of the parties stays in the territorial jurisdiction of the court, or either of the parties stays in a jurisdiction which is for a time being given to the court, or the court would consider those parties wherein the parties have entered into a kind of a transaction, which particular transaction or a property belonging to that particular party is situated in this particular court's territorial jurisdiction. Then in that case, the particular court would be considered to have a power or the authority to entertain this party. Now, next is to try. To try means what? To conduct the proceedings. Important is the court before whom we are going must be a court who is having a power or the authority to try the matter. Now, the court is having a capacity to try the matter, maybe in the form of original suit, or maybe in the form of an appeal, maybe in the form of revision, maybe in the form of review, or maybe in the form of execution proceedings. So, in what capacity court is sitting? Suppose if the court is sitting in the capacity to entertain a execution proceeding, then in that case, for that particular case purposes, we would consider that particular court to be a execution court and not the court which originally can entertain the matter. So, from this point of view, later on, if we another example is if suppose we make an appeal before the higher court. The higher court is having a dual capacity jurisdiction. Firstly, the original jurisdiction, wherein if anybody directly files a matter at the first instance before the court, then in that case, the court would be having a right to entertain that particular matter under original jurisdiction. Similarly, this court is also having a right to entertain the appeal. For the reason this court is a higher one, and therefore, whatsoever the subordinate court is, whosoever the subordinate court is, if suppose decides a matter and with the decision in that particular matter, the party is aggrieved. Then, in that case, the party may move in appeal, and here the party comes in appeal before this particular court. Then, in that case, the court is having a appellate jurisdiction also. So, whenever we are talking about a jurisdiction and we says that court is having a power and the authority to try the matter, then in that case, whatever matter we are taking before the court, we must ascertain ourselves that we are taking the matter before the court in the form of an original jurisdiction or in the form of an appellate jurisdiction. If we are taking an original jurisdiction, then the court must have a power to entertain the same. If we are taking an appeal, then in that case, the court must be in a position to try that particular appeal or should have a power or the authority given by the legislature to try that matter in appeal. Next is to determine a cause. Need not necessarily all the time court is having a right to determine the cause. Now, how we are going to understand this concept? Sometimes one court may direct another court to just secure an evidence of a party and to give that evidence back to the original court. Then, in that case, the other court to whom a duty has been given just to take an evidence would not be considered to be a court who is having a right to determine a cause. So simply what he have to do is he simply have to conduct an evidence and to give his report along with that particular evidence to the prior court. So in that case, we would say that in order to determine a cause, in order to determine a cause means for what purposes the matter has been filed before the court. If that particular court is competent, been given a power or the authority under a legislature, then in that case, only in that situation, we would say that the court is having a jurisdiction to determine a cause. So that is to say, jurisdiction means power and authority to entertain, try, and determine a cause. Now, second, if we take second aspect of this particular definition is it is nothing but an authority to hear and decide a legal controversy. Now, what is important is not only the parties will be having a right by virtue of the whatever transaction they have entered into, but there has to be somewhat a legal provision relating to those particular right. So whenever there is a legal provision relating to those particular right, then in that case only we would say that particular dispute between the parties is in relation to legal controversy. So whenever we say that there is a legal controversy, then only the term jurisdiction would be used for the purposes of deciding the authority or the power of the court, whether the court is having a right to hear or decide that particular legal controversy or not. So, for the important of considering any court to have a jurisdiction, it is again important to understand that okay, later on we'll decide whether the court is having a jurisdiction or not. But firstly, let us decide whether there is a legal controversy or not. If there is a legal controversy, then only the question of assessing whether the court is having a jurisdiction or not arises. Next is authority by which the judicial officer takes the cognizance of and decides the cause. Jurisdiction is nothing but a kind of authority given to the court. Court here means what? A judicial officer who is sitting for the purposes of taking the cognizance of and deciding the matter. So it is nothing but a power or the authority given to a judicial officer also. Now, the power or authority which is conferred upon a court by a legislature to hear and determine the cost between parties and to carry the judgment into effect. Here it is not only that the legislature has given the authority to the court to simply just hear and determine, but it also mean that the court would be having a right to pass a judgment to that particular effect. Passing a judgment to that particular effect means to determine a cause. So whatever the judgment, whatever the decree would be passed by the court would be having a binding effect, and the parties would be considered to be bound by that particular judgment. And then only whenever a decree is passed, we say that it conclusively determines the right of the parties. And when we say that it conclusively determines the right of the parties, then only the matter comes to an end. And bringing a matter to an end is very purpose of allowing a party to file a suit before the court. And hence jurisdiction simply means not only the right to hear or determine, but also to carry out a judgment into that particular effect. Once the judgment is passed by the court, once a decree is passed by the court, then in that case what we have to do is we have to file a execution proceedings. When we say that execution proceedings is to be filed, then in that case it assures that whatever the decree or whatever the judgment is passed by the court, for the purposes of implementation of that decree or for the purposes of implementation of that judgment, some effective steps need to be taken, and that effective steps simply means an execution proceedings, and that execution proceedings is been filed in the same court in which the decree has been passed. So not only the passing of decree, but also carrying out that particular decree or a judgment into effect, the implementation of the same also means a jurisdiction of that particular court. Now coming to the next, jurisdiction further means it is nothing but a power to hear, determine and pronounce a judgment on issue before the court. So it is nothing but whatever the issue which has been framed by the court with the help of the advocates in any of the matter, then in that case to decide all the hears, to decide all the issues, the court is having a power to not only hear but determine and to pronounce a judgment on all those issues which are related to that particular matter. But if any of the issues are there which do not have any of the relation with that particular subject matter or a parties, then in that case the court may strike out that particular issue. It is called as a strikeout. So court may strike out that particular issue, and if court finds that there are somewhat an important issues but are not been framed in that particular matter, then in that case the court may frame an additional issues which need to be decided for, because the very purpose is what, the very purpose is we have to decide the matter in such a way wherein it narrow down the area of conflict between the parties and conclusively determine the right of parties. And after passing of the decree, there should not be anything which remains undecided. And hence, it is necessary that if there is a need of framing an additional issue, the court would do that. If there is a need of striking any particular issue, the court would do that and accordingly would pass a judgment on those issues. So again, this is called as a jurisdiction of the court. Next is power to inquire into the facts, to apply law, to pronounce judgment, and to carry it into execution. Now, power to inquire into the facts. Power to inquire into the facts, to apply law, to pronounce judgment, and to carry it into execution means what? So, jurisdiction also means that a particular court is having a right to inquire into the facts. For the purposes of inquiring into the facts, what the court do? The court may ask the production of document, the court may ask the cessation of an object, the court may ask the party to produce affidavit, the court may ask a party for impounding of that particular document. So all these things could be done for the purposes of inquiring into the fact. The court may further issue commission for the purposes of inquiring into the fact. So issuing a commission or asking for production return or impounding any kind of a document, that is what is also called as a jurisdiction of the court. When we say that it is nothing but a power of the court to apply law, so whatever the law under which the party is claiming a right before the court. Whether that law really provide for the right to the parties, or there is any other, because even in the prayer clause we say that any other relief which the court deems fit. In that situation, if the court finds that there are any other law wherein the party may ask for various remedies, then in that case the court may suggest or may advise the parties to make an amendment in that particular plaint as required, and hence the court may even have a power to apply any particular law for the purpose of conclusively determining the real dispute between the parties, not only to inquire into the fact or to apply the law, but to pronounce a judgment and to carry out its execution is again comes under the definition of the term jurisdiction of the court. So students, if we go through the jurisdiction, what we found it in the conclusion, that it is nothing but a power and authority to entertain, try and determine a cause. It is nothing but an authority to hear and decide a legal controversy. It is nothing but an authority by which a judicial officer takes cognizance of and decides the cause. It is a power or authority which is conferred upon a court by legislature to hear and determine the cause between the parties and to carry the judgment into effect. It may also be called as a power to hear, determine, and pronounce judgment on issue before the court. It may further be called to be a power to inquiry into the fact, to apply a law, to pronounce a judgment, and to carry out it into execution. So every aspect of the case which need to be done or which need to be entertained by the court is covered under the head jurisdiction. Now, if we take into consideration some of the case laws, even in the case laws, the court has tried to define the term jurisdiction. As such, jurisdiction term is not defined in CPC, but only Section 6 deals with the pecuniary jurisdiction. But simply considering a pecuniary jurisdiction to be a jurisdiction in all the respect is not sufficient, for the reason that till this slide we have never been came across with the word pecuniary. Pecuniary means a value related jurisdiction. So, for the purposes of understanding the term jurisdiction, the court even has played a very important role in giving us the definition of jurisdiction. In Raja Soap Factory versus SP Santaraj, in this matter, the court held that a jurisdiction means an entitlement to enter upon an inquiry in question. So, jurisdiction means an entitlement. Entitlement means what? It is nothing but an authority given by the legislature to the court to enter upon the inquiry. Enter upon the inquiry means to go inside the matter in order to ascertain a real dispute between the parties. So, this entitlement is nothing but a jurisdiction of the court, and this particular jurisdiction extend to enter upon an inquiry in the question. Another example of the jurisdiction or definition is A.R. Antule versus R.S. Naik. In this matter, it was held that jurisdiction is an authority or the power of the court to deal with the matter and make an order carrying a binding force. In fact, because we have already studied that a competent court having a jurisdiction, if passes a decree, then in that case, that particular decree would be considered to have a binding effect. Here, the jurisdiction is an authority or the power of the court to deal with the matter and make an order carrying a binding force in the facts, then in that case, the same would be considered to be a jurisdiction. Now, a question comes in our mind that who grants jurisdiction to the court? Then in that case, answer is it is the legislature. It is always the legislature who grants a jurisdiction to the court. Now, jurisdiction of a high court and supreme court, for example, has been given under where? Under constitution. It has been given under constitution. So, constitution deals with the jurisdiction of a high court and the supreme court. Now, if we take another example, like for example, administrative tribunal, then in that case, jurisdiction of administrative tribunal has been provided under Administrative Tribunal Act 1985. So these are the examples of some of the legislature providing the jurisdiction to the tribunal or to the courts. So for the purposes of understanding who grant the jurisdiction to the court and to understand that it is always a legislature who grants a jurisdiction, these two examples I think would be sufficient one to understand. Next, who determines the jurisdiction? Who determines the jurisdiction? Who decides that the court is having a jurisdiction? So, because it is definitely it has been granted by the legislature, but the plaintiff may not knew which legislature is having has granted this particular court a jurisdiction to entertain the matter. So it is a legislature which confer or withdraw the jurisdiction to the court. That is what we have studied in our last slide, where what it has been provided that it is a legislature who confer, expressly who confer or withdraw. If suppose the legislature want to withdraw, then expressly he have to mention, the legislature have to mention that the court jurisdiction has been withdrawn. So it is always the legislature which can confer or withdraw the jurisdiction of the court. Now, while determining this particular jurisdiction, certain principles is to be kept in mind. Now, what are these principles? Civil court are the court of general jurisdiction and are competent to try all the suits of civil nature unless their jurisdiction is expressly or impliedly barred. Students, whenever we study this particular sentence, the meaning of this gets we get more clear under section 9 of CPC. What does section 9 says? All the civil courts are having a right to entertain all kind of civil matters unless and until it is barred by the law. It simply says that whosoever is the civil court is having a right to entertain whatever the matter we have filed before the court. But suppose if that particular court is being limited by any or is being restricted by any legislative provision, then in that case that particular civil court would not be in a position to entertain our matter. Now this particular limitation or restrictions are what kind of limitation and restriction? So these are the restrictions in the form of jurisdiction. Jurisdiction may be of various kinds. For example, territorial jurisdiction, pecuniary jurisdiction, then subject matter jurisdiction, then original and appellate jurisdiction. Now take us example. Suppose if we talk about a pecuniary jurisdiction, every court is having their pecuniary limits. So, civil court are there who will be having a right to entertain the civil matter. But again, there is a restriction wherein, if suppose a particular court is having a pecuniary limit, that is to say, suppose if that particular court can only entertain a matter of 2 lakh rupees a subject value, then in that case, that particular court, though may be of civil in nature, though may be competent to entertain a matter of our subject, but again would be having somewhat a limitation over it, and hence if our the value of our subject matter enhances or exceeds rupees 2 lakh, then in that case this particular court would not be having a jurisdiction to entertain the same. So here means what? All the civil courts are the court of general jurisdiction. All of them have a general jurisdiction. General jurisdiction, it means what? Whatever the matter of civil nature is there, the civil court would be having a right to entertain the same, and they are competent enough to try all kind of suits of civil nature. But if there is somewhat limitation has been or restriction has been put by the legislature over the jurisdiction of these courts, which may be expressly or impliedly barred, then in that case only those matters which been permitted the civil court would be entertaining, and those who've been barred would not be entertained by the civil court. Another point is jurisdiction can neither be given to a court nor it can be removed by the consent of the parties. It is not the parties who decide that the court is having a jurisdiction or not. There are certain parameters as we have discussed, pecuniary, territorial, subject matter, original, appellate, and it has been provided by the legislature. So it is always a jurisdiction which is given by the legislature and not been conferred by the consent of the parties. It is not like an arbitration wherein the both the parties with the consent of each other appoint one arbitrator and who decides the matter for them. It is not that kind. Next is a decree without jurisdiction is null or void. Suppose if we have filed a matter before the court and the court do not have a jurisdiction at all to entertain that particular matter, but the court, in spite of knowing this particular knowledge, if suppose decides a matter, then in that case, the whatever the decree which is passed by the court would not be having a binding effect over the parties, and such type of a decree would be considered to be null and void. So, whenever we say that a decree without a jurisdiction is null and void, jurisdiction, understanding the term jurisdiction becomes very important. And therefore, when we want to have a decree, it is important for us to file a matter before a court who is having a competent jurisdiction to try the same. And therefore, a decree passed by the court having a jurisdiction only would be having a binding effect. For that purposes, we have to keep it in mind. A precaution is to be taken, and that is to say, whenever we are filing a matter before a court, then in that case, that court should be a competent court to pass a decree to that effect. A decree without a jurisdiction would be considered to be a null and void. Next is a court has an inherent power to decide its own jurisdiction. Hence, a question as to jurisdiction has to be raised before the same court. Because if we take into consideration the first point, very first point, the very first principle, it says that it is every court is of a general jurisdiction. If we take into consideration this particular terminology, we would find that a court has an inherent power to decide its own jurisdiction. Court would decide whether the court is having a jurisdiction or not. Definitely, he would take a reference of the legislature in order to find out the jurisdiction, in order to find out whether the court is having a jurisdiction or not. But here, the court has an inherent power to decide its own jurisdiction. Hence, a question of jurisdiction has to be raised before the same court. But definitely, the party is going to raise an objection stating that the court do not have a jurisdiction to entertain the same. The party is at a liberty, the defendant is at a liberty to challenge the jurisdiction before the court. But again, we would say if the court finds that it has not been expressly or impliedly restricted, then in that case, the court would consider that the court is having a jurisdiction to entertain the same. Now, next is jurisdiction depends upon the averment made in the plaint. Now, actually, how the matter gets started before the court? It is always like a plaintiff who makes a plaint or who files a plaint before the court. He write down that the court is having a jurisdiction. On what basis he write down? Because either is staying in the court territorial jurisdiction, or a defendant is staying in a court territorial jurisdiction. The pecuniary value of that subject matter is within the pecuniary limitation or jurisdiction which has been provided by the legislature to the court, or the party is filing a original suit or is filing an appeal. So it is always the plaintiff. It is always the plaintiff who first try to find out that whether the court is having a jurisdiction or not, and he does so by simply filing a matter before the court. Later on, it is the court who looks into the legislation in order to find out whether the court is having a jurisdiction to decide the matter or not. That is the different question. But again, it is the jurisdiction depends upon the averments. Averments means what? Whatever the pleading, the plaint put forward, this averments actually at the very first instance try to decide whether the court is having a jurisdiction or not. Now, next point is the presumption in the favor of the jurisdiction. The presumption in the favor of the jurisdiction, because the party knew that defendant is residing in the territorial jurisdiction of the court. Either the property is situated within the territorial jurisdiction of the court. I am filing a civil matter. The court is of a civil nature, and the subject value of that particular property also comes within the pecuniary limitation of the court. Then in that case, what I'll be presuming that the jurisdiction is in, the court is having a jurisdiction. So the presumption must always be in the favor of jurisdiction in order to make myself certain whether the court is a competent one or not, for the purposes of determining the controversy between me and the other side. Next is ouster of jurisdiction should not be readily inferred in the absence of any express provision. Suppose, for example, if there is no provision provided for the purposes in order to ascertain the court is having a jurisdiction, then in that case, ouster of jurisdiction should not be readily inferred. I must not, if there is no express provision over there, then in that case, I must not infer that the court is having a jurisdiction. If there is no express provision, I must not infer that the court do not have a jurisdiction. So whether the court is having a jurisdiction or not, it must be important, it become very important that there has to be a express provision. And so far as withdrawing of the jurisdiction is concerned, then in that case again express withdrawal of the same is to be considered, because if we consider that the court is having a jurisdiction under the header general provisions, we would consider that the court is having a jurisdiction, but that is not the case in respect to the withdrawal of jurisdiction is concerned. Next is the onus of proof lies on the party which challenge the jurisdiction. Now, who is the party who is going to challenge the jurisdiction? It is always the defendant who is going to challenge the jurisdiction. So, onus of proof. Onus of proof means what? Burden of proof. Over whom the burden of proof lies? Because the plaintiff is making a plaint and therefore he would be saying that the court is competent enough to deal with the matter, because the pecuniary limitation, the subject matter value is within the pecuniary limit of the court. Defendant is residing in the territorial jurisdiction of the court. Apart of that, the court is having a original as well as appellate jurisdiction, and because I'm filing a matter at original instance, so court is having a original jurisdiction to entertain the same, as well as the subject matter of the suit again is within the purview of the court, and hence the court is having a jurisdiction to entertain the same. But this is what this may be challenged by the defendant. Defendant always, even though he might be knowing that a court is having a jurisdiction, but still in his written statement he must all the time say that the court do not have a jurisdiction to entertain the matter. If suppose he says that court is having a jurisdiction to entertain the matter, then in that case he would be losing one or the other opportunity or a scope to challenge that particular decision, and hence he must all the time be claiming that the court do not have a jurisdiction to entertain the same. But yes, definitely whenever he says that the court do not have a jurisdiction to entertain the same, he would be having a burden of proof in order to confirm that whether the court is having a jurisdiction or not. Now, objection as to jurisdiction must be taken at the earliest available opportunity. Why it has been provided that it has to be taken at the earliest available opportunity? For the reason that it would always be better that matter at the earliest be removed with all the objections. Suppose if the objection been entertained till the last stage, then in that case all the work done by the court would be of no use, and hence it is important that whatever the objection relating to the jurisdiction of the court is there, then in that case that is to be taken at the earliest available opportunity. Now, defendant must raise the objection at the earliest, and there are two reasons for the same. Now, what are these two reasons? If the defendant succeed, if just imagine, if the defendant do not take the objection at the earliest, then in that case, what would happen? If the defendant succeed in satisfying the court that it is not vested with the jurisdiction to entertain the suit, the court shall not proceed with the matter, and there shall be no need for defendant to contest the matter on merit. But suppose if the defendant do not object the jurisdiction, then in that case the court would decide the matter on the basis of merit, and there may be the chances wherein the defendant may lose the matter, and therefore it is important that defendant must raise the objection so far as jurisdiction is concerned at the earliest possible opportunity. Once again, we'll go with this sentence. If the defendant succeeds in satisfying the court that it is not vested with the jurisdiction to entertain the suit, then in that case definitely the court would not, and court if suppose get confirmed and court is satisfied with the statement made by the defendant, then in that case the court shall not proceed with the matter further, and there shall be no need for defendant to contest the matter on merit. Next is where the jurisdiction of a trial court is not questioned before it, and the trial court passes a decree which is which is impugned before the superior court. Now, where the jurisdiction of the trial court is not questioned, right? Matter was filed before the court, defendant did not objected for the jurisdiction of the court, and accordingly, what has happened? The court has decided the matter, and the trial court has passed the decree too, which is impugned before the superior court, which was challenged before the superior court. Then in that case what would happen? Such a superior court may refuse to entertain the plea of jurisdiction of the trial court. Then in that case it may happen wherein the superior court may refuse to entertain the plea that the trial court was not having a jurisdiction, because the superior court would say when the trial court was not having a jurisdiction, you were knowing this, then in that case why didn't you take a objection at the earliest opportunity? Therefore, on the basis of that, we would say that the jurisdiction is a good ground of defense. Good ground of defense for whom? It is a good ground of defense for the defendant. And the court is bound to decide the question of jurisdiction at the first instance. Before going further in the matter, it is always better for the court to decide whether the court is having a jurisdiction to entertain the same or not. Students, we would see there are various kinds of jurisdiction. Now, what are these jurisdiction? These are a territorial jurisdiction, pecuniary jurisdiction, jurisdiction of subject matter, and original and appellate jurisdiction. Now, what do we mean by the term territorial jurisdiction? As we have discussed that it is in relation to the place, a geographical extent to which the authority of civil court extends. It is also called as a local or a territorial jurisdiction because it is in relation to local or a territorial limit. This local or territorial limit as is fixed by the government. For example, High Court is having a territorial jurisdiction over a state. District Court is having a territorial jurisdiction over a district. Similarly, the pecuniary jurisdiction, it relates to the value of the suit. The court have their own pecuniary value. These court do not exercise those suits in which the amount or a value of subject matter of which it does exceeds their pecuniary limitation. So all the court have to work within the pecuniary limitation which has been granted to them. For example, the Court of Civil Judge Junior Division is having a authority to entertain the suits having a value up to 1 lakh rupees only. The High Court and the District Court do not have any pecuniary jurisdiction limitation, hence, they can entertain the matter to whatsoever extent it is. If we take into consideration the jurisdiction of the subject matter, we would find that the court may be competent to deal with the matter of a specific kind. For example, family court, matrimonial matters, civil court, civil matters. Now, the original and appellate jurisdiction. Some of the courts are vested with original jurisdiction only. For example, the Court of Civil Judge and the Small Causes Court. Some of the courts are having original and appellate jurisdiction. For example, the district courts and the High Court. So, the students, this was actually a very important question, and this deals with the jurisdiction and its various kinds and the other related aspect which need to be understand for the purposes of jurisdiction point of view. I hope you have understood the thing. Thank you so much. Thank you.